Welcome back to another video, guys. Today we're looking at, again, the correct way to sell your timber. Now, I always want to preface these videos, timber is a pretty niche market, and so you're going to have different best ways of doing a timber sale depending on the region and area you're in. Where I'm at is Ohio. And in my opinion, this is the best way to do a timber sale. I've been in every part of the business, and the reason I'm doing what I'm doing now is because I ultimately feel this is the best route for a landowner to go. And so basically, what I want to walk through with you guys on this is a pretty small property. We're talking 27 acres. So it's not going to be a huge amount of timber, a huge amount of money, whatever. And it's not, really high-end timber even. It's not like it's full of white oak. But this client, one of the neighbors actually had people come out to give him a price on their timber. And, while he was here, he asked, "Hey, would you mind if I go back and, give you an estimate on your timber?" And, and so the landowner was, "Yeah, go ahead, go, take a look at it and stuff." And, he kind of did a cruise through. He didn't, scale each individual tree. He didn't, give him an actual tree breakdown number, board feet. He gave him some rough numbers, but that was simply from coming through and eyeballing it. That's not a specific breakdown. When a buyer does that, and I want to say there's a lot of buyers that are really good at what they do, and so they can get very close. I'm not gonna, say they can't get close. The problem is it's still, when they're estimating like this, they're going to keep themselves on the safe side. They don't ever want a woods to have less board feet after the job is finished than what they initially estimated. And so they're going to keep themselves safe. What I do is I come in, I'm working on the client's behalf, not, as a buyer, and I'm going in and marking each individual tree, giving you a full breakdown, tree number, tree species, board feet breakdown. And then I've got a network. My family's been in the industry for over 50 years. And so I've got a network of really good, reliable buyers that I can then send a bid sheet out to and have those buyers place bids on this timber. And so because of where I'm at right now, this particular job is pretty local to a lot of the buyers that I work with. And so this is going to bring a premium, even though the actual timber itself may not be premium grade timber. This will be still bringing good money for what it is. So follow along. We'll go through, mark the timber, and kind of show you what my process is. So here we got a big maple. It's got this fork. Well, of course, hottest day of 2025 is when I'm out here marking timber, but so be it. Got to keep things rolling. So like I said, this is a little bit of a there is some good timber in here, but it's a lot of maple, and weirdly enough, right now maple is fairly hot, so it's a good time to do this. But if you look at it from the scope of your highest species right now are white oak and walnut, and it's been that way for like a decade. Middle of the road is your poplar, red oak, maple, and then you got your hickories and then blocking material below that. So this has a lot of maple, a little bit of red oak, poplar. It's got some hickory, a little bit of beech, some junk timber in here. So it's going to do it a lot of good to get kind of a reset here. There's enough oak scattered through, especially up here on this other ridge, that it's really tight in there. There's a lot of soft maple, and they're really tightly compacted, and so they're going to be growing really slow. And if we take out some of those maple, it's going to release those small red oaks dramatically. And you know, I had this on my personal farm a couple years ago. I did a harvest on it, and it was a very selective cut. And when I bought that property, I was told that it was selectively harvested 26 years prior. And when we cut some of these big white oak down, you could actually count back the exact rings to when it was last harvested. And, you know, prior to that harvest, the growth rings were so tight together, it was growing so slow you could hardly differentiate the years. After that, I would say quadrupled the amount of growth happening after that harvest. It was wild. And so, you know, it just kind of goes to show you how much one of these, you know, release cuts can do for our woods. And obviously there's management on the back end for a landowner. I mean, you need to be aware of invasives. You need to be aware of, you know, say for instance, you cut down a beech tree, and if you're not, you know, wanting beech to come back in, it'd be a good idea to go back through and treat some of the stumps, which this woods doesn't have a lot of beech, so that should be easy to do, but you know, it's going to throw a bunch of shoots off of that stump if you don't. And obviously loggers aren't going to be doing that. That's not really their job. And so there is always management on the backside for landowners, but as a whole, this is going to get a lot better timber to begin to grow and sort of take its place. Well, it's the next day. Put in a couple hours yesterday, but got started a little bit later, and it was unbelievably warm. So hopefully we can wrap it up today. We got a little bit over halfway, so shouldn't take terribly long to knock the rest of this out. And then we got, the neighbor has a little 2-acre piece that we're doing, and at some point I need to get the boundary lines marked as well. So still got some work ahead of us, but got a lot done yesterday, so shouldn't be terrible today. Right here, we're in a pocket of quite a few poplars up and through here. On poplar, I'm a little bit more aggressive on, simply because they grow so quick. You can set those back a little bit harder than an oak tree, and you know, they're gonna regenerate quickly, they grow quickly, and you know, makes more sense to be more aggressive on those versus a white oak, for example. They're a little bit slower growing tree, and so I'm going to be a little bit more conservative when I'm marking, you know, a white oak stand. So a lot of this property, though, like I said earlier, is maple, poplar, and hickory. And so really this entire woods is going to respond fairly quickly when you do a harvest. And then, you know, we'll be more conservative on the red oaks and white oaks that are scattered through this property. So, well, we're on top of the hill. Let's keep going. So it's interesting how different portions of a property, even a small piece like this, can be made up of dramatically different timber makeup. So below me, you know, is a lot of maple, and they don't look big from here, but you know, decent sized timber going down through there, graduating, getting more towards your poplars and your oaks and stuff up on the other bank on the other side. But up top here, you can see it's just a lot of little stuff, and on the back of this is a pasture. So I think what happened here, this looks like this was all pasture at one point and was just kind of let go, and you had a lot of soft maple, a little bit of red oak, some poplars, cherries, some just kind of low grade type timber began to regenerate in that area. Now there is some desirable species within that. You know, I don't have an issue with poplar. It's just when they get, you know, out of hand or really, really mature, you know, there's no point in just, you know, I'm fairly aggressive on poplar. And then you have some decent black oaks coming up through there, which in some regions of the country are very undesirable. Here, there's a market for them. They're treated like red oak and they bring decent money. And so I don't have an issue with that. So what I'm trying to do on this ridge top here is you have a lot of little forked maples. So a lot of them are too small to be marketable and usable. But what we will do is go through, and anything that is big enough to take, we're going to be cutting. Even though, you know, maple is not necessarily a, you know, trash species, the makeup of these trees is a lot of forks, a lot of low quality maple. And so if we can kind of reset this entire ridge top, that's sort of what I'm looking to do. And I'm going to be doing a much more aggressive cut, you know, maybe down to 16 to 14 inches DBH, trying to get some of these trees, especially around some of these better oaks, to be able to release those and hopefully change the composition of the timber up on this ridge. And so that's kind of a big reason why you want, you know, somebody like myself to come in and look at your timber. When, you know, a lot of, you know, if you're dealing with a typical buyer, at least here in Ohio, see a lot of diameter cuts. And frankly, I don't actually have that big of an issue with them. I have kind of come around and I've seen more and more of their value. But there is elements like this that, okay, this section here should be cut harder than, or let's say you just do a selective, you know, diameter cut at 18 inches. It's really not aggressive enough. The makeup of the maple in here are stacked, and you should cut those more aggressively. And so that's sort of some of the nuances with working with the forester. He's gonna be able to see that, see different compositions of your timber, and thus is going to have a more custom or a more tailored approach to those different sections of timber, rather than just doing a, you know, 18 inches chest high across the board. And you know, if you're selling the timber yourself, I do think that's one of the better ways to do it. I would say a huge majority of the timber here in Ohio is done that way. It's just an 18 inch or a 20 inch or a 16 inch DBH, which is diameter breast height, chest high. And so, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. And frankly, if you're going to be doing the sale yourself, that's probably what I would recommend, unless you have some kind of expertise or kind of already know what you want. For example, if you're doing a you know, cut specifically geared towards whitetails, maybe in its big mature timber, maybe you do a 20 inch across the board cut, and then, you know, you kind of know where you want your bedding areas to have them go in there and just take everything they can out of those little sections. That's something you can do yourself pretty easily as well. And I am currently working on a project that will hopefully be able to help you as a landowner begin to take a little bit more control and you know, give you the tools to fully do some of these sales yourself. So I'm not going to say more than that. And this is probably going to be a long-term development here. It's going to take some time to get out what I want to do, but we might start laying the groundwork for some of this stuff coming up. Pretty excited about it. So I appreciate you guys watching. Follow along, click the subscribe button for any more videos related to timber management, timber sales, and I'd like to throw in some hunting content in the fall just because it's what I love to do, and they mesh nicely. So I'll see you guys in the next one.